Good day to Professor Maya Dr. Rokia. In this video presentation, we are going to discuss our project findings on the company's background, literature review, disclosure of MFRS 108, 110, 116, 136 key audit methods, and financial analysis on the 5 listed companies, which include Tufu Technologies Corporation Berhad, Muhiba Engineering Berhad, Big Industry Berhad, Gabungan NQRS Berhad, and Persona Metro Holdings Berhad. To support our project, we have found 5 articles for the literature review. Firstly, we can summarize from the first article that many of the circumstances are depending on accounting estimates. Therefore, accounting estimates must be based on the best information available when the financial statements are prepared to ensure that it's free from management bias. Secondly, management tends to manipulate accounting information. Some studies found an increase in earnings management during the economic crisis. Thirdly, management tends to transfer earnings to the following period when projected future performance falls. For example, COVID-19 that happened after the previous fiscal year, business were able to move a portion of their profits of the prior year to the future period. Fourthly, as the conversion of MFRS 139 to MFRS 9, criteria considered in classification and measurement of financial assets are the business model of an entity used for managing financial assets. Lastly, cost models are the most common models used by companies that do not have the intention to sell their assets later. For the key audit matters, auditors should present professional judgment and competence in auditing to allow users to understand thoroughly about the auditing process.
Good day everyone, I am Chani Xuan and my metric number is 280648. I will be presenting about background of companies. This is a Malaysia-based one-stop manufacturing firm that was incorporated in 2002 and based in Ipoh. This is a Malaysia firm that involves in marine, oil and gas and infrastructure project. It is an investment holding company and its main segment manufactures, distributes and markets industrial gases. This is an investment holding company that acts as a contractor and it engages in property development. It is a construction and manufacturing company that was incorporated in 1996 and based in Seri Kembangan, Selangor. All of the companies have only changes in accounting policies for disclosure of MFRS 108. For Company Tufu in 2018, MFRS 9 and 15. In 2019, MFRS 117 and Interpretation Committee 4 were replaced by MFRS 16. For Company Muhiba in 2018, MFRS 9 and 15. In 2019, MFRS 16. While for Company BIG in 2019, MFRS 15. Replacement of MFRS 117 by MFRS 16 took place in 2020. Company Gabungan had a transition from previous FRS framework to MFRS 1 in 2018. In 2019, MFRS 16. There is amendment to MFRS 16 in 2020 that recognized changes in lease payments as variable lease payments instead of as lease modification. Company Persona in 2018, MFRS 9, while in 2019, MFRS 16. Subsequent events of all of the companies are non-adjusting events for disclosure of MFRS 110. For Company Tufu in 2019, the company proposed to undertake a bonus issue of new ordinary shares. Company Muhibah in 2019, the subsequent event is coronavirus outbreak. For Company BIG in 2018, the company entered into a sale and purchase agreement with a third party. In 2019, an announcement was made regarding the proposal to undertake a private placement. In 2020, coronavirus outbreak is the non-adjusting event. The subsequent event for Company Gabungan in 2019 is also COVID-19 pandemic. In 2020, the company proposed to undertake a private placement. For Company Persona in 2020, outbreak of coronavirus pandemic. That's all for my presentation. Thank you.
I'm Roberto Atira binti Abdul Rahman with metric number 281424 will explain about the disclosure of MFRS 116 property plant and equipment. According to our findings, most companies use the cost model as subsequent measurement except for Muhiba Engineering Berhad as they use the revolution model. All companies use the straight-line PPE depreciation method as it is the simplest method and assets can be written off completely. This table also shows the depreciation rate for all companies from 2018 to 2020. Next, I will explain about the disclosure of MFRS 133 impairment of assets. Only two companies have the impairment loss, which are BIG Industries Berhad in 2018 and 2020, while for Gabungan AQRS Berhad only in 2020. The reversal of impairment loss only occurs for BIG Industries Berhad in 2020 with 19,567 ringgit on plant, machinery and cylinders. Based on the findings, there were no impairment loss and reversal of impairment loss of PPE for the other three companies in 2018 until 2020. Thus, there were no significant difference between the years before COVID-19 and during COVID-19. This table also displayed the percentage impairment of PPE for all companies from 2018 to 2020. Based on our discovery, this is our key audit matter. There were two key audit matters for Tufu Technology Corporation Berhad, which are the impairment of trade receivables and the valuation of inventories from 2018 to 2020. While for Muhibah Engineering Berhad, there were four key audit matters, which are revenue and profit recognition for construction contracts, investment in associates, the net realizable value of inventories under work in progress, goodwill impairment and the impairment of trade receivables. Due to unfavorable macroeconomic variables resulting from the projected decline in global crude oil prices, the chance of customers going bankrupt is considered. Thus, considerable judgment is required. Besides, BIG Industries Berhad has three key audit matters, which are impairment of trade receivables, right of use assets, and lease liabilities, PPE impairment, impairment of the intangible assets, and impairment of the investment in the subsidiaries. On the other hand, Gabungan AQRS Berhad and Pesona Metro Holdings Berhad only have two key audit matters, which are the impairment of trade receivables and the revenue and profit recognition for construction contracts. Therefore, we can conclude that the common key audit matters are the impairment of trade receivables and the revenue and profit recognition for construction contracts, because almost every company that we are chosen has both of it in the key audit matters. That's all from me. I pass the presentation to the next presenter. Thank you.
The first comes to return on asset. In 2020, DUFA had recorded 0.25 and decreased to 0.18 in 2020. And for Muhibah, it recorded 0.13 in 2018 and decreased until 0.01 in 2020. And for Muhibah, it recorded a negative 0.07 in 2018 and also a negative value in 2020 with negative 0.04. And for Gabon AQRS, it recorded 0.05 in 2018 and become negative in 2020, which is negative 0.04. And lastly, for Persona, it recorded 0.02 for 2018 and 2019 and become negative in 2020, recorded as negative 0.02. Next is return on equity. In 2018, DUFA had recorded 0.32 and it fell to 0.23 in 2020. For Muhibah, it recorded 0.3 in 2018 and fell until 0.01 in 2020. And for BIG, it recorded negative 0.04 and have a slightly increase to negative 0.07 in 2020. And for Gabon AQRS, it recorded 0.15 in 2018 and decreased to negative 0.11 in 2020. And lastly for Persona, it recorded 0.03 in 2018 and decreased to negative 0.08 in 2020. The next one will be current ratio. In 2018, DUFA had recorded 3.99 and it increased to 5.02 in 2020. And for Muhibah, it recorded 1.76 in 2018 and decreased to 0.49 in 2020. And for BIG, it recorded 1.03 in 2018 and increased to 1.26 in 2020. And for Gabon AQRS, it recorded a slightly constant current ratio, which is 1.45 in 2018 and 1.43 in 2020. And for Persona, it increased from 0.97 in 2018 to 1.11 in 2020.
In 2020, DUFA Technologies Berhad's debt-to-asset ratios was 0.18, in which RE 1 ringgit total assets was only financed by 18 sales liabilities. Since debt-to-asset ratios decreased compared to 2018 and 2019, which were before pandemic COVID, indicate that DUFA Technologies Berhad used more equity to finance its assets. Muhibah Engineering Berhad might be risky during pandemic COVID-19 in 2020, since the company's debt-to-asset ratios were increased from 0.7 to 1.14 in 2020. A debt to asset ratio larger than 1 indicates that the firm has more liabilities than assets. Big industries perhaps debt to asset ratio has fallen since years compared before and after pandemic COVID-19 and indicates that big industry perhaps use more equity to fund its assets in these few years. Adopt Persona Metro Holdings perhaps show that increased debt to asset ratio from 2018 to 2020, but since the ratio remained less than 1 indicates that Persona Metro Holdings perhaps still have more assets than liabilities, and there was no any readjusted debt to asset ratios for Gabungan AQRS Berhad in these few years. Dufu Technology perhaps has a debt to equity ratio less than 1, indicating that the companies was generally less risky in these 3 years. Adopt Muhibah Engineering perhaps debt to equity shows a decrease during pandemic COVID in 2020, but the ratio is still greater than 1. It indicates that the portion of companies' assets provided by creditors is greater than stockholders. During pandemic COVID in 2020, big industry perhaps showed that a growth quickly in debt to equity which was 1.9. It is more risky compared with the same industry which is Dufu Technology perhaps, since that is a riskier form of financing than equity. Debt to equity of Persona Metro Holdings perhaps same situations with Gabungan AQRS perhaps, which don't have any much change in these 3 years, but clearly show that having a high risk due to debt to equity is greater than 1 in these 3 years.
As the conclusion, under the disclosure of MFRS 108, the common policies adopted by most of the companies are MFRS 9 and MFRS 15. In the year 2019, all the companies have adopted MFRS 16 as required by the Malaysian Accounting Standard Board. These changes are mostly adopted retrospectively. In the disclosure of MFRS 110, most of the events are classified as the non-interesting event. The common event faced by all the companies are the event of COVID-19 pandemic outbreak. Regarding the disclosure of MFRS 116, most of the companies are using the cost model. Companies will make the impairment for their PPE whenever there is any indication such as the COVID-19 pandemic outbreak. For disclosure of key audit matters, each company has been applying the same common key audit matters for 3 consecutive years. These key audit matters involve the assumption of management judgment and estimation. That's all for our presentation. Thank you for staying with us.